A very good afternoon to everyone. My name is Soumya. I'm also a part of the executive team here at CIBF. It's a pleasure to have all of you here with us. So today we have our first panel discussion for the day with Mr. Perses Bilimoria. We have Lieutenant Colonel Monish Ahuja with us, and we also have Dr. Arabinda Kumar Padhee. We were also supposed to have Sir David King, who served as the UK's government's permanent special representative for climate change, but couldn't make it due to medical reasons. I have a really long list of inspiring introductions for the day, so let's get started with our first panelist. He is Mr. Perses Bilimoria, who's the founder and CEO of Earth Soul India Private Limited, India's first compostable and biodegradable product manufacturer. He also sits on the Standards Committee for the Bureau of Indian Standards, with special reference to biopolymers from renewable resources in India. He was also a member of the Environment Committee of FICCI and a member of the Steering Committee on Waste Management for CII. He's the pioneer of the biopolymer movement in India. He has recently been appointed as an advisory committee member of the International Biochar Initiative, headquartered in Washington, D.C. He's always been a passionate environmentalist, has been involved with climate change research since 2001. Currently, Perses Bilimoria serves as a consultant to several municipal bodies, MNCs, and Indian government advisory panels on climate change, waste management, and environment. Next up, we have Dr. Arabinda Kumar Padhee. He has extensive experience in agriculture policy space and has a very unique understanding of agricultural research and development at both national and international level. He is a PhD from the Indian Agricultural Research Institute in New Delhi. Dr. Padhee also holds a master's degree in public administration from the University of Birmingham in UK. Dr. Padhee joined the esteemed Indian Administrative Services, IAS, in 1996. He has held several important positions both in the government of Odisha and the government of India. As the country director of the International Crops Research Institute for the Semi-Arid Tropics, in his immediate past assignment, Dr. Padhee played a very pivotal role in the successful journey of the Research Institute. He's also a recipient at various awards and recognition ceremonies, such as the National Award for Contribution to Humanitarian Services, given by the Indian Red Cross Society. He's also a member of World Bank's India Agricultural Policy Advisory Group. Dr. Padhee regularly writes opinion pieces, scholarly articles around issues related to climate change, agriculture, nutrition, and food policies, and also has interest in promoting sustainable, inclusive, and resilient food systems. Pleasure to have you here with us, Mr. Padhee. As our last panelist, we have Lieutenant Colonel Monish Ahuja with us. He is an alumnus of the prestigious National Defense Academy in Pune and has also a post-graduation in MTech in nuclear technology from Baba Atomic Research Center. He's also known as the Biomass Bioenergy Fraternity as a dedicated and knowledgeable leader. He has been advocating the barriers faced by biomass bioenergy project developers at various seminars and forums, and has been instrumental in impressing Niti Aayog, G20 organization, Global Biofuel Alliance, and World Bank towards the use of farm agri-residues. As chairman, he's dominated as a committee member to examine the issues of paddy straw supply chain under Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers' Welfare. He has also presented the famous Project 42 in December 2020 to Prime Minister's office in India, which was well received to be incorporated as a very important part of the sustainability track and bioenergy focus. Let's give it up for the panel once again. I think now I will leave Tanmay to it, who is the current JBS MBA student who's going to take care and moderate the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Soumya, for that introduction. I would like to start the discussion by asking my first question to Mr. Bilimoria. Mr. Bilimoria, you have worked extensively in the Indian sustainability space. Could you share some of those experiences with us, and what challenges did you face on the ground, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, thanks, Tanmay. Thank you for the introduction. May I just start by saying that I'm a maverick, I'm out of the box, I'm an out-of-the-box thinker, and hence the title that is the topic of discussion mentions India's potential to be a global sustainability leader. What is the definition of the term sustainability? What is sustainable? It's defined as meeting the current needs without compromising the future. I think everything that we are doing for the last many decades has been in contrast to what sustainability stands for completely. Because the fact remains is that the loss of biodiversity, as Dr. Hamid was saying, natural capital, again, which is part of biodiversity, has been lost in the entire phrase of economics. Economics has left out biodiversity and natural capital completely. So this needs to be addressed, and the way that it can be addressed is redefining sustainability to transformative change. Now, when we talk about transformative change, it means a complete change from the present going to the future. And how does that involve humanity? It's the way our healthcare, it's the way we eat, our mobility, our energy. Everything that we do needs to have a transformative change which encompasses and is symbiotic with biodiversity and nature. So that's the one bit that I'd like to sort of redefine again. Sustainability, like net zero, a group of scientists globally well known have debunked net zero. It should be net neutral because net zero takes into account only anthropogenic emission. What we've forgotten is that the natural ecosystems which were sequestering CO2 have now flipped to becoming net emitters. So if you balance out anthropogenic, which is human-induced emissions, together with the natural ecosystem emissions, you level that out and phrase it as net neutral. Coming to the question that you asked me is my journey in this. I can only think of Winston Churchill's phrase of defining success is how you can accept success with failure upon failure upon failure, and your enthusiasm, and I will add, and wisdom to move forward. And I'm saying this because I think in everything that I did in the Indian subcontinent, I was way ahead of my time. So when I started bioplastics in 2002, everyone laughed at me saying that it's never going to work. I said, no, I was focused that I need to replace plastic. And this all started because I was walking on a beach in Goa in 2002, just pre-monsoon, and I could barely walk on the Aguada beach. And I saw the waves coughing up all this plastic and the rest of the waste. And I said, surely there must be a solution to this problem. And nature doesn't have a doctor, it doesn't go to anyone, a specialist, anything. It takes care of itself. And I realized I did research and then stumbled upon an Italian company, and I went there, and the CEO of the Italian company said, Mr. Bilimoria, listen, we are just selling some containers to Japan. India, you stand no chance. Why? Because the cost of raw material is 100 times more expensive than normal synthetic plastic. But I said, let's go for it. So I went. I was determined. I prodded the government. I worked very hard at BIS standards. I even in 2008 got the Finance Minister of India to waive duty on the raw material for agricultural purposes, little knowing that the duty exemption was fraught with so many other issues that eventually it would have been easier for me to have paid the higher duty than to actually enable the exemption of duty. So that's one of the things. But having said that, it was a tough haul for me for about 15, 20 years. It wasn't a successful venture, but I must say at the end of the day now, as I see it and I look forward or look back, there are so many people that have cropped up in this space in India, and it is one of the replacements for synthetic plastic. But again, something that struck me way back because I was involved in the climate change work was it's not sustainable because the raw material was cornstarch. And corn is grown on arable land. And even if it's 1%, the future we see with climate change, every single bit, square yard or square meter of land that you have for arable purposes can't be used to produce a polymer. But there are advancements that are made in technology, so which is a very good thing. Similarly for biochar. Everyone talks of biochar now. I kicked this off in 2008. I formed the Society of Biochar Initiatives in India. I got only 5 members. Now you hear it being spoken about globally, everywhere. Biochar as a carbon sequestration tool, as a soil amendment, as agricultural benefits. So everywhere I found that I was ahead of my time. And I think at that point, India was at that inception point where it was still not clear on whether environment and climate change was a priority sector. So that's my bit to begin with.
Thank you, Mr. Bilimoria, for sharing those experiences with us. I'll come to Dr. Padhee now. Dr. Padhee, you have worked in the Indian agriculture policy making and implementing those policies on the ground. Climate change is one of the biggest threats to Indian agriculture. How do you think Indian agriculture can be made more climate resilient? And what are the policies in place to help the farmers in doing that?
Thank you, Tanmay. Let me begin with my thanks to Jaideep. I came for another workshop as a keynote speaker, but then Jaideep got to know from my friend Manoj there, and then they got me connected. So it's there, the pin mic is there, sir. So thank you so much for noticing. And I'm very happy to speak on a subject of my choice and interest. But I'm super happy that in a business dialogue, you are speaking about agriculture. I have not seen in many instances people speak about agriculture. You can produce anything from any country, but if you are not self-sufficient in agriculture sector, if you are not food secure, if you are not nutrition secure, no country can be strategically a superpower. This is, something very commonsensical, but let me elaborate from the beginning so that you kind of appreciate the agriculture sector in a bigger way. Tanmay, you spoke about the impacts of climate change on agriculture. Let me tell that agriculture also contributes to the climate change. As per the last BEUR, the biennial update report, every second year a country is supposed to give their GHG inventory as per the Paris Agreement. About 14 to 16% of the GHG emissions come from the agriculture sector. At least in Indian figures I'm quoting. So that we need to take care. That's where the climate resilience aspect comes. But how does the climate change impact agriculture sector? Let me elaborate from my own experience. I am the principal secretary of the agriculture department of my state. I come from Odisha, not ORISSA. It is already changed to ODISHA. So let me correct the JBS team.
It's not Odessa.
We can debate on that later. But then it is ODISHA, Odisha, the actual pronunciation is for the Odia language. So I'm the principal secretary of that department. And I'm very lucky that I have worked in this policy space. I feel very lucky. Many bureaucrats do not like to be in the primary sector. They are not glitchy or glamorous. But then I come from a very humble background. My grandfather was a school teacher and a farmer. I take pride in my roots, and I am very happy that I'm contributing my bit in the policy space in the agriculture sector. How does the climate change impact the agriculture sector? In fact, if I quote one World Bank study, it tells that by 2030, at the present rate of global warming, there would be a reduction of 1.5% of the global GDP because of the impacts of climate change in agriculture sector. So because you always like number crunching, all of you in the business school, so I wanted to start there, but I will be speaking very commonsensical language, no jargons. I would try to avoid. The first one is on the impact of the production. In fact, you can see, do you know what is the temperature of Delhi yesterday? Some people, 52.9 degrees Celsius. Can you imagine where on earth can you survive? You are living in Cambridge, so you would not appreciate. I came from Delhi and I got a sudden cold fever. In fact, it was 45 the day I left, and here I landed at 11. So you can imagine for a biological system, what would be the impact on the crop production. So crop production, in fact, there are many empirical studies by very established scientists which says that just by 1 degree Celsius increase in the temperature, ambient temperature, the production of wheat alone would be lessened by 5 million tons. So it's better we appreciate and then kind of take measures there. So the declining crop yields would be one of the major impacts. And then, of course, the increasing risk of the crop failures. So as I told, now the total, when it comes to climate and agriculture, we always talk about the rainfall. In my state, I made an analysis for the last 110 years data from the IMD, and I found that the amount of rainfall is remaining the same, about 1452 millimeters. But the extreme weather events are increasing. The day it rains, it will be very huge. And the dry spell is very large. So that impacts the cropping cycle very much. And of course, unlike many European countries, in a country like India, the smallholder farmers dominate. The India country-wise figure is about 85 to 86% of the farmers, they have a land holding size of less than 2 hectares. And in my state, it is as high as 93%. So you can imagine when they have limited access to the resources, or they have less of adaptive capacity, how kind of negative impactful it would be on the smallholder farmers. The next would be on the water stress and the irrigation challenges, because the evapotranspiration will be more, and because of the rising temperature, the irrigation challenges will be too much. And then the shifts in growing seasons. Earlier, the onset of monsoon, the Kerala coast, of course, the southwest monsoon had just reached the Kerala coast. But then the onset of monsoon again is shifting. Earlier, in Hindu almanac, the Akshaya Tritiya used to be the start of the agricultural season. Akshaya Tritiya is already gone long back, about 15 days back. But the monsoon has not started. So how it would impact the cropping season cycles, you can imagine, and that's where we have to prepare. And then on the spreads of pests and diseases, on the nutritional quality, with the rise in temperature, the quality of protein changes, and there are many empirical studies. The protein content will go up, go down, the nutritional values will be impacted. So it is a catastrophic situation, but then don't get panicky. There are solutions which I will come later. These are all very significant impacts on the agriculture sector by the climate change. Thanks for asking in the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Padhee, for sharing those key insights with us. I'll now come to Colonel Ahuja. Colonel Ahuja, you are one of the pioneers in biomass energy generation in India. In your opinion, what is the potential for biomass energy in India, and what are the key challenges to its widespread adoption?
So thanks for that. Good afternoon, and thanks for inviting me here. Gave me the opportunity to travel to UK for the first time, though only for 2 days. So agriculture should not go away. So let's agree to what Dr. Padhee says. And if that's not going to happen, on a ratio of what we are going to produce to eat or to use, balance of the crop is almost about 70% by weight. And today, when you talk about the energy paradigm, India's number is 18% on the electricity of the energy mix. The global numbers are about 22, 23%. So that means all that we have been doing on energy, on climate change mitigation has been predominantly at about 20% of the spectrum. And if we need to grow on the energy landscape and grow sustainably, we will have to, in quick time, look at the 80% of that energy mix. And that 80% of energy mix, if we have to address, would come only from the bioenergy sector. And I'm slightly, cautious in saying so here, because all of y'all are going to study and go into it, but I make this statement. Now, specifically in terms of India's potential, we are and we will continue to be a net importer of energy and only going to increase, because we are still much below the data line of a developed economy for our energy consumption. So we are going to significantly increase our energy consumption. So the farm agri residue potential, and I'll give some numbers which are kind of startling. The Agriculture Ministry puts it out as about 450 to 500 million metric tons per annum. The Ministry of New and Renewable Energy in India puts it at about 230 to 270 million metric tons per annum. There are few studies done by IRI, etc., which put it at about 750 million metric tons per annum. And a study funded by the UK government Green Growth Equity Fund, FCDO UK, puts that data, and it is one of the most exhaustive studies, puts it at 1,500 million metric ton per annum. So I ask government, and I ask myself, what is it that I need to base my business on? What is the correct number? And you could look at numbers, but with the diversity of farm agri residue that we have in India, the diversity of cropping patterns, this statistical and empirical data is itself today questioned. So at least I go with 1,500 million metric tons per annum, because I was participative for 2 years as part of that study. And we did every district, every taluka of the country. And when I saw this number of 1,500, I was startled that the government is not giving me data which I can use as bankability for doing projects. And thus, with that report of 2022, I knocked on every possible government regulatory body, and I presented that report, including the Prime Minister's office. And I said, I only have one ask. Let me know what's the correct data. Either we will junk this, or we have some data from India to say this is the potential. And now, if that's the potential, and let's take a number of 1,500, straight away, if we utilize what is coming as a farm agri residue, I'm not using the word waste, a residue which has no economical value for the farmer. More often than not, the farmer is burning it in the fields. It's causing widespread pollution, PM 2.5. The health impacts. The US body publishes a report that India is losing $30 billion per year on the GDP because of this, and we junked that report, because somebody else is doing it for us. And then I questioned all these bodies to say, then what is the number? Is it 15? Is it 20? Is it 10? And whatever the number, there is something which we are losing out on our GDP, and we are paying for it as health cost, environment cost. Can't we bring it upfront and spend it upfront, so that we mitigate what we are paying later without a value proposition around it and going waste? So if we can use this farm agri residue of 1,500 million metric tons, we would have a 22% import reduction of energy that we do. We are not doing it. And when we are not doing it, I'm cautious in saying we are not doing it to the scale of the opportunity. So the scale of the opportunity is in recognizing the problem. And the problem brings entrepreneurship, the problem brings innovation, the problem brings implementation, like you rightfully said, sir. Because, pardon me again there, sir, you are a bureaucrat. Bureaucrat makes fantastic policy. But by the time the implementation comes, it's a 2-year hot chair, they change. So you have to perform in 2 years. And thus, the policy needs to be long-term. Ownership of policy needs to be long-term. And such residue capital, which is pure energy, clean energy, we're going to invest billions of dollars globally in carbon capture, storage, and utilization. Photosynthesis of a plant growth is doing exactly that for us. carbon capture, storage, and we can utilize it for energy. So why are we reinventing the wheel? And we are moving away. I mentioned to somebody yesterday the KISS philosophy. Keep it sweet and simple. Nature is doing it for us. All we need to do is 4 elements to work on. The first one is upstream investment. Upstream investment in supply chain management of farm agri residue. It's not done because the farmer doesn't do it for economic value. They don't have that as a marketable product. So if we do that, midstream investment to put in projects to utilize this. And this is the entire paradigm of energy. You name the energy requirement that you can think of happens from this farm agri residue, and it's happening globally. The downstream requirement of demand for such sustainable energy may be initially at a higher cost because we don't like numbers to increase, but then the scale is going to bring that cost, the innovation is going to bring down that cost. And fourth, most importantly, in the entire spectrum of these 3 elements, finance. So the Delhi burning problem, it's been 14 years for me post my army career in handling rice paddy straw. And then I realized year after year, I get called upon in media, government calls me, policymakers call me, and I present them the solution. And it's happened consecutively for 14 years. And now I don't go anywhere. So I wrote this project 42. It is 42 million metric tons of rice paddy straw, which burns in North India in 30 days. I presented to government how you can utilize this 42 million metric tons across 11 sub-projects, and you decide what you want to do. I'm not telling you do 1 or 10, you do whatever you want to do. And to do this, you will require $30 billion. And in India today, to think $30 billion, there's only one office. So I went there, and I presented it multiple times. They had a lot of questions. So it's well understood. And if we find the $30 billion, we'll have a solution for 42 million metric tons burning, but use same analogy for 1,500 million metric tons. There's trillions of dollars of capital which is required in this segment. I'll pause here.
Thank you, Colonel Ahuja, for raising this issue. I was about to ask this the same question to you, the stubble burning issue. I'll come back to Dr. Padhee. Stubble burning is one of the biggest source of pollution in India, agriculture space, mostly in northern India. And Colonel Ahuja said that biomass energy generation can be one of the solutions to address that issue. Are there any policies in place to address this issue, both from the government and also any support from the private sector?
Yeah. Let me tell you my understanding about this. It is not very significant contributor to the GHG emissions in the agriculture sector. As per the last BUR, the stubble burning contributes only 2%, less than 2% of the total GHG. In fact, the maximum quantum of GHG emissions come from the animal agriculture sector, the enteric fermentation and others. Agriculture sector again would be about 24%, mainly from the rice paddies because they emit methane. The urea usage kind of enhances the nitrous oxide, and there are many other factors. So stubble burning, again, I cannot discuss politics because I just committed civil servant. I cannot criticize government policies, but there is a political economy question to the stubble burning, which we can discuss. I wrote about it, and I was also interviewed by one of the business dailies in Delhi, and you can just Google and get to know more about it. It's a very largely different topic altogether, but how can we make the agriculture sector sustainable? I think that's what you are asking, Tanmay. So before that, let me also give you, because Colonel Ahuja gave some pessimistic thoughts, so let me give some positive ideas. The post-COVID-19, in fact, there is a growing demand of the consumers for healthy food products. So I think nobody would deny there are evidences which say that there is a shift towards healthier diets, not only in India, but all across the globe. So COVID has this positive unintended consequence there. Equally, because we have the business leaders here, and I can just tell that equally encouraging is the advent of the stakeholder capitalism, because we are now talking about the ESG factors, and as Ravikant sir also told, that companies are no more operating by prioritizing their shareholders. They're also talking about a different part altogether, and ESG and climate finance is again coming up. But in this, there are many good things which are happening. Pardon me, I will just speak good things. I am not representing government, but I have my own intellectual freedom. But I will speak something which is positive. Take, for example, the life approach, lifestyle for environment. As an individual, we can make meaningful contribution to the collective climate action, and that's where out of the 7 elements that the life approach that India presented in the 75th year of its independence in 2022 in the COP26, 3 are directly relevant to the sustainable agriculture sector. I just noted down before coming to this. I'll just tell about the water usage. We need to be efficient in our water usage. There are many studies, and if you take the American studies as the most relevant and kind of most credible, there are NASA studies in Punjab alone. The water table is depleting at a high rate of 0.3 to 1 meter. Can you imagine? About 3 feet depletion of groundwater is there in our parts of our country. It's extremely alarming. So we need to fix this as such. And then on the sustainable food systems, in fact, as I told, we need to shift our diets. You can just Google. I would not like to present my own story or the story from my own state. The Odisha Millets Mission has now become a model as to how you can diversify from a very unsustainable paddy system to this kind of nutrient-dense and climate-resilient crops. So you can just, if you are interested, you can know there, and you can know better about that. And the healthy lifestyle, as I told, there is a growing demand for the organic products. There is a growing demand and also concern around the negative impacts and the natural farming practices are also going. And India has taken a lead. We have the national mission on the natural farming and many others, which may not be to that scale, but we need to promote food and diet diversification. I would just like to give a framework that we have devised from our state. And I would just only speak about 6 points which could take care of the resilience or the sustainability in the agriculture sector. The first one is about the climate preparedness. The information on the weather, we, at least in my state, we give this advisory to all the farmers. I have a DPI, the farmer registry of 7.9 million farmers. For those of you who would not be aware, Mr. Bill Gates visited my office just to learn about the DPI just 2 months back. So very few people talk about my state, but on the digital public infrastructure in the agriculture sector, we are now seeing as to how informing the farmer on real time on climate information can help in their disaster preparedness to reduce the risk. The second one, I agree with Colonel Ahuja, there is the policy coherence. There are many departments in government, and it is often said that we work in silos, and if there is no coherence, because agriculture again is a state subject, if the government of India policy, the federal government's policy and the state government's policy do not match or they are not in sync, maybe the ultimate positive outcome would not come. So I would suggest that the policy coherence again would be a very important thing. The third one I told about social inclusion, because we have many smallholder farmers. In my state we have large number of tribal farmers, the PBTG groups and the like, so we need to take care of them. And of course the gender parity will be a great point there. And the fourth, again, because many of you would represent the industry, so the industry and corporate participation in the agriculture space in the bringing climate resilience again will be important. So public-private producer partnership through formation of FPOs, because the smallholder farmers, if you collectivize, then only the scale will operate, or in many other sectors linking the farmers to the markets, and the FPO, the farmers producers organizations will be essential. And in India, as you know, in fact, the government is to provide an enabling ecosystem for the post-harvest, the aggregation and the exports that can happen. The fifth that I would suggest is on the technology adoption. I spoke about the DPI in agriculture in my state, and also on the digital tools, all the applications, all the jargonized words that we use, the AI, ML, IoT, anything that they have a direct thing. But then we need to invest more on the research and innovation. I told, if the temperature rises and if you do not have a tolerant variety or a kind of a breed, then they may not sustain. So we need to invest more. Do you know the agriculture research investment in our country? It is only 0.35% of the agri GDP, which is very low. It is as high as 5 to 6% in Israel and China and many others. So we need to scale up our investments in the R&D sector. And the last but not the least, I spoke some time back, is about the resource efficiency, whether it is soil, whether it is water, whether it is energy. Everywhere we need to bring efficiency in the system, and we need to produce, because we have to produce more from less. All the resources are shrinking, but we have to feed a burgeoning population. So how do we kind of bring that efficiency gains through research, innovation, and investments will be the key. So these are my suggestions from my own experience. And Colonel Ahuja spoke about the stability. Yes, the stable government or a stable civil servant might produce better outcomes. But even if somebody is not posted for a long period, if the institutions are stabilized and if the things are in place, because now when we speak about the agriculture sector, we only talk about the subsidies, because political economy is extremely perplexing. So, but if you have a very robust institution in place, if you bring investments, if you make the private sector participate, I personally feel that the agriculture sector also can become resilient.
Take 30 seconds.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. So, specific to your question, 4 government schemes which are path-breaking in the segment of bioenergy. One is utilization of biodegradables, farm agri residue, and municipal solid waste for biofuels, and mandated now to be compulsory as a mix in the conventional energy segment. So Ministry of Petroleum runs 2 schemes. One is the Satat scheme, which is the Sustainable Alternative Transportation, where 5,000 compressed biogas or renewable natural gas plants would come up at a confirmatory base price of purchase, which in the last 4-5 years has been significantly increased. And this would be put in the gas grid and also available for clean cooking and available for the transportation sector. So we are developing a gas-based economy, and we are going to take the biomass route for gas to be produced. We have the ethanol blending program of the same ministry, which the target of 20% is being met, and about 16% of it is going to come from our first generation ethanol, which is the sugarcane route. But to go to that 22% of what the automotive industry allows with no change of engine, we will still have a 6% of second and third generation ethanol production required. And this is developing technology. Most of such technologies developed globally in the European countries have failed. But the Indian government has stepped up to showcase to the Indian business community that it can be done. So all the oil marketing companies have been directed by government to set up these large biorefineries. They are still stabilizing, but there are 5 coming up on the ground, and one of them is in Odisha as well.
Yeah.
These would now pave the way for government showing that second generation ethanol can be done, and now the private sector to come in and take that ahead. There is a co-firing mandate in all coal power generating assets. So this is under Ministry of Power, called as the Samarth scheme, where up to 10% of biomass has to be co-fired. That means we would be reducing 10% of our coal consumption. It's incentivized with a higher pricing. It's also now incentivized for it to be done with a penalty mechanism. So if the coal power IPPs don't do it, it's called as an environmental compensation from the Ministry of Environment. And 2024 is the first audit year. So come January, there would be audit of those who have not done it, and penalties would be imposed. So that's the Environment Fund coming. Then there is Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, which has the mandate of biomass-based power cogeneration. And also now, out of the 5 streams of green hydrogen, biomass to green hydrogen is one of them, which is again the mandate. And hence we are taking biomass to green hydrogen. 4th is the Ministry of Commerce, which 2 years back, after a period of almost 50 years of policy change, has allowed export of biomass from India, which was banned. And I was personally involved in this for about 2.5 years, and it took me 2.5 years to impress upon government that why are we not allowing export, because there is a higher price value which is available from the European markets and Japan markets. And this has now been allowed, so commerce and trade has come in with biomass. And thus, across India, we are seeing a revolution of capital investment coming in across different streams of energy in the biomass sector. So you asked for schemes, so these are various government schemes.
That's true.
Thank you, Colonel Ahuja and Dr. Padhee, for highlighting those policy actions that India has taken in this sector. Before I open up for the Q&A session, I'll come back to Mr. Bilimoria. Do you think India can become a global sustainability leader in the next 10 to 15 years?
So I would always like to look at it in a positive framework, but if you ask me, someone who's been researching climate change at a global level, there is a very, very small window of opportunity that is left, because if everyone knows the trajectory that we are on, it's now non-linear and exponential. We know that last month we crossed 1.5, we are at 1.68 degrees Celsius warming. We all know that once you cross the 2-degree threshold, which could be very soon, all that my co-panelists have spoken about would probably go through the window, because the changes that we will need, the window of opportunity is going to be a very short period. Now, when you talk about sustainability in India, there are some very troubling aspects that come to mind. The first one is this whole thing about deep sea mining. Now, we've opened up, I think we've applied to the International Seabed Authority, the ISA, to say that there's a belt in the western part of our Arabian Sea and one in the eastern part, to open it up for exploration for polymetallic nodules. Now, what are polymetallic nodules? They're nothing else but cobalt, manganese, cadmium, the rest of it, all that goes into lithium-ion batteries. So we have now not only plundered our forests and biodiversity on land, but now we are going to look at deep sea mining as well, which doesn't augur well. But the narrative is that we need to compete with China. And that's forcing us politically to be sort of at an advanced level of exploration. Now, having said that, that's one area. The other area which I think India can rather than be having a sustainable role, I think what we can engage with is this transformative change. And the transformative change can come from basic governance, governments at the grassroots level. So there needs to be a lot of and interdisciplinary exchanges that happen. Right now, we see a lot of different departments working in silos. The scientists, the societal aspects, all these are not taken together. I think it's essential that they all come into a common place. And you know what? I go back to my dear friend Sir Partha Dasgupta and his recent preface in the book that he's launching. He said that in the old days, the developed economies were outsourcing their biodiversity to countries in the tropical regions. So they were in effect plundering our natural resources. That all must change now. And I stress this to the students in MBA that anything that you do in the future in terms of innovation, you must ensure, if you want to have success, you must ensure that biodiversity is symbiotic with economics. Yeah. If that doesn't take place, the whole case is lost completely, because the transformational change that is needed is not going to happen at all. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Bilimoria, for those insights. I'll now open it up for Q&As. Please.
Hi. So I'm a public policy student. I have a question for Dr. Padhee. Great that you mentioned DPI and the use of it. I would like to understand, you speak about agricultural resilience and smallholder farmers, right? So what sort of how can we have private capital interest towards financing solutions as well, beyond just imposing technology and technological products? I think coming up with those financing opportunities at the grassroots level is also very important. So what are your considerations as a bureaucrat, as a policymaker as well? Second question for Col Ahuja. You speak about different ministries, right? Ministry of Commerce doing something, an initiative there, Ministry of Power doing. How do you see that those efforts being reconciling? Because these are totally different ministries, different government officials looking at different agendas. I think it's very important to sort of combine those efforts as well, right? So these two questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I start with your climate finance for the smallholder farmers. When unless and until there is a business case, maybe the industry or the corporate sector may not invest for the smallholder farmers. But then there are cases, for example, developing a climate resilient or a particular tolerance to biotic or the abiotic stresses. There are many private companies who are coming out with the varieties and the breeds, and many technologies have come up. So that way it might indirectly help the farmers. But to my sensible mind, for bringing climate resilience and kind of preparing the smallholder farmers to tackle the challenges, the public sector investments must go up. I give you an example. Suppose if you tell a farmer to diversify from an existing paddy ecosystem to say non-paddy, millets or pulses or oilseeds, he or she may not go. Because unless and until the new portfolio brings him or her more money or same money, nobody is going to go for it. This is from my own personal policy experience, and we have succeeded. That's why I'm narrating this particular example. And then we give incentives to those farmers who would switch over from an existing paddy and to non-paddy. And surprisingly, maybe Punjabi farmers are more prosperous or large farmers. They have not gone for it. But my tribal farmers and smallholder farmers in my state have gone for it because of a very conducive policy environment. And in our millets mission, we have switched over a good number of such farmers from an existing paddy system to a non-paddy like millets. Now we have gone ahead with another very high-scale climate resilient or a carbon positive intervention called rice fallow management. After the harvest of rice in Kharif, the available soil moisture can take care of another crop. How many of us have been emphasizing on this? Because once the rice crop is gone, the cattle will graze and the moisture is lost. But if you go for a small duration, say 2 months, 2.5 months crop of pulses or oilseeds, they not only will give extra income to the farmer or bring some nutritional positive outcomes, they are also good for the soil health because the pulses are nitrogen fixing crop, and then they kind of bring a good soil profile. So we are taking up many such interventions in our case. So I personally would say that there are, of course, startups with green investments coming up, but they are minuscule in numbers as of now. So I would suggest it is the duty of the government to take care of bringing climate resilience.
Sorry, just to follow up. Do you see subsidies or for working out or incentives working out for farmers, or just cash grants? What is the method of financing them?
So it is always incentives through kind of a DBT model. What we are doing, the direct benefit transfer. So we give on a tapering manner. If somebody is going for a green practice, a regenerative practice, then only we incentivize the concerned farmer. And we see that if you incentivize a farmer for 3 to 5 years, it becomes sustainable. So, and at the same time, if somebody is producing, kindly ensure that the procurement of the marketable surplus of that farmer also is taken care of. In our case, we are also taking care of the procurement. So ours is by design, we are inclusive in our approach. At least I'm talking about my state and the interventions that we are doing for bringing climate smart agriculture.
So thanks for the question. So, the policymakers, at least in my decade of interacting with them, I find them very receptive to listening to new ideas. And I also find that it is getting implemented. So I'll talk about 2 specific examples which I can bring to the table. I got invited by one of the secretaries, Government of India, about 7-8 years ago, without giving me an agenda, and only about 8 hours to travel from Mumbai to Delhi. And I went there, and to my utter shock and disbelief, we were about 10 of us on one side of the table, And on the other side of table, there were 8 secretaries of Government of India, along with the McKinseys of the world, and they bolted the doors. And these 8 secretaries gave us a presentation. And this was a full day session. It was not, typically bureaucrats don't have time, and I don't mean that in that way, sir. But
Don't take me as a representative of the bureaucrats.
But 8 secretaries presented India's energy transition to clean energy as a roadmap for 50 years across all forms of energy. So India is planning long term. And after that, upon me bestowed giving my views on the bioenergy sector, and I don't know why I was chosen to be there, but I did, and the secretaries were making notes. And one of the points which I gave there was the priority sector lending that you have is only about 15% of the debt component. And that means you go to one bank or a financial institution for 15%, and then you start going for 85% to other financial institutions. And then you go to other financial institutions for working capital. And why would somebody do this only for 15%? 15% of the debt component. And post that, and that Secretary of Finance now is the Chief Election Commissioner, in 1 month, that limit was up 4x times. So the outcome was so fast that a valid point made in a forum finds merit for execution. The second part, you spoke about Mission Life, sir. Mission Life today allows anybody in India to go and plant a tree. You can put the grid reference on the app. And for that, an individual can, on the trade index, which is going to start happening, trading of the carbon credits, you can sell those credits. So individuals would start getting credits around it. And somebody told me to talk about what we do on the eco-cremation side. But India as a country, the largest Hindu population in the world, for every Hindu cremation, we cut down 2 trees. And wherever somebody dies, what happens is, the youth in the village go down, and the nearest 2 trees available, they cut it down and they bring it for the cremation. So on one side, we are saying, give carbon credits for planting a tree, and that's a program we have started. But on the other side, unabated, unethical cutting down of a tree for cremation. But it's a society, it's religion. We need to give Agni Moksha. You need to put fire. So what did we do? This farm agri residue that we have, we densified to briquettes. And these are 90 mm dia briquettes, and today across India it happens in rural India. And this is again, and these briquettes now you replace wood for eco-cremation. But will society change? Will government participate? Will regulators push it? Is the political will going to push it? Yeah. The answer there, all 4 is yes, which I have seen in the last 3 years of doing this. City of Aurangabad in Maharashtra, and I put out this number on 1st of every month, so I'll do it tomorrow as well, on what has happened in the previous month. And my number of April 24 is 93% of all cremation in the month of March, on 1st of May, month of April, has been on 100% biomass briquettes. Oh. Society has changed without government pushing it and just being an enabler. And this got picked up at the highest offices. I was called and said that 654 villages across India, this has to happen. The Honorable Prime Minister has spoken about it in Man Ki Baat twice. And today it's a movement. So every place that we go to, the Shamshan yogis or the crematoriums themselves are moving away from wood because it is more expensive. This is much cheaper. And in India, I didn't know, I learned this, government pays for the cremation. 4,000 to 4,500 rupees per cremation is paid by Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. So a separate ministry is paid by the Rural Development Ministry for the rural part. But the sourcing of the wood is Ministry of Forest and Environment, Ministry of Agriculture involved because now we do, briquette based. And this now, all these, secretaries together, there is a committee formed by government to push this as a mandate. There's also another committee formed by government of 4 secretaries for the synergies we are talking about. So MNRE, Power, Petroleum and Commerce. There's a committee of these 4 secretaries, Government of India, for the development of a bioeconomy, biofuel economy in India. And once this got formed, one of the secretaries called me and said, Colonel, happy it is done. I said, sir, you missed out one main guy, the Secretary of Finance, because each one of you will go back to him. So he said, you're right. The soonest we incorporate him, we'll be able to take it faster. So it's happening. The synergies are coming. And, again, compliments to the government in the way it is happening. But we need to do much more. And we need to allow a mindset change for private capital to come in and get the reasonable IRR return. Why do we have to look at private capital saying that they're here to make money? No, they're here to make money, but with a social change, solving a problem. And in that, if they make money, very good. So I sell briquettes to an industry at 8 rupees per kg, large scale. But I sell briquettes to a cremation at 12 rupees a kg. And somebody asked me, what's your growth plan? I said, India is growing in numbers and people are going to die. So I don't need to, don't need to do anything. It's available. Thank you.
Thank you. We may have time for one quick question, though. Yes, please.
So my question is to Mr. Ahuja. Basically your company invests in machinery to pick up biomass and process it to make steam. So my first question is that how do you ensure circular economy here? Because if you're making steam from biomass, I think there's some burning or something involved. Or if you've found another technology to do it. And once you've done that, so once you have the steam and you're selling that steam to potential clients, a few clients in this space I know while I was doing my MBA, a few clients in this space would want to prefer owning the biomass, not operating it, but owning it. And a few clients would just want to buy the steam. So what is the proposition that you pitch to those?
Sure. Thanks for the question. All of it is the answer. But my first steam contract was supplier, and I wanted to talk to sir about it. And the opportunity came because, as a company, we give a fit-for-purpose solution to the client as they want it. So we have a consulting division which curates and builds the ecosystem as to where do you need to go and put a project. So if you look at the steam aspect of it, these industries are already existing. And thus, you have to move the biomass to them, which needs to get densified for that movement. So you need to do industrialization of densification plants, briquettes and pellets where the biomass is available, and then move that. The other part is, once you move it, it's a utility for an industry. Steam is a utility for every industry possible. There are thousands and millions of boilers in every industry. And typically these are on fossil fuel. Furnace oil, LDO, coal, high-speed diesel in some cases. So my first opportunity, I'll talk about Cipla. They had invested about 35 crores in a path-breaking technology boiler. And that boiler for 6 months was not working. So a lot of you inquire, why is it not working? Belgium technology, Indian company. And we sensed the opportunity to go and sell biomass over there. And when we went there and multiple visits going to Pune, finally, the person is retired, Mr. Anil Mahajan, who was the technical head. I told him, I know how to operate boilers, allow me to operate it. And he said, this doesn't work. I can't put a spoke in my process because even if the steam is not available for 2 minutes, my batch fails. So I need it 24/7, 365 days. And I said, give me a chance. Because it was an asset already invested in, they gave me a purchase order for 30 days, 1 month. How do you bring technical manpower to operate a technical asset for 30 days? But we took the challenge. So it's about entrepreneurship opportunity. And we said, we will do this provided you allow us to bring the biomass sustainably. Because if that doesn't come, the boiler will stop. So we got the package for 30 days. It got extended for 30 days. It got extended for 30 days. And after 90 days, I said, honeymoon period over, now what? So now we got it for another 90 days, and then it went on. And that gave us the understanding of what these boilers are. So we learned on the job, but our strength continues to remain as supply chain management. Then the leap of faith, where clients said, this is utility. Why should I invest in the boiler? You know how to operate it. Why don't you invest in it? And another pharma company, in this case, Sun Pharma, 14 months they negotiated with me. Every week somebody used to call me there. And after 14 months they said the order is yours, and I was put before the chairman. And he said, fantastic, you're giving me an energy price which is 40% lower than your next competition. How are you going to do it? And I told him. And then the order is yours. I said, I have a problem. So what? I said, I don't have money. So he said, you tell me this after 14 months? And I said, yeah, it's a fact. Today you're giving me an order with 12 months to give you steam, and I'm telling you I don't have the money. So he says, and you're taking it with guarantees of performance and, default clauses. I said, yes. So he said, what can I do for you? I said, give me a bank guarantee of the investment amount. So he said, I might as well put the boiler myself. I said, yeah, you can do it, but you'll not be able to run it. So then he said, my credit guarantee of my company is as good as a bank guarantee. And he gave me a 100% credit guarantee. So I took that credit guarantee and I went shopping to banks and I got money. When I went for the shopping, I realized Government of India does not recognize a steam boiler. Today, we're talking about industrial decarbonization. It's recognized as an industry. The Ministry of Heavy Industry doesn't recognize it as an industry. So if I'm going to set up a boiler and multiple of them, where do I go to? Which is the port of call? So I went to Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, and I told the Honorable Minister and the Secretary, can you change the name to Ministry of New and Renewable Electricity? Because you don't do energy. You do only electricity, and they got the point. Today, India, 23rd July 2019, has a government order for industrial steam or any energy that you generate from any renewable source to be a renewable asset and a project. Thus, you get preferential lending. So now we built assets, and we like to get our hands dirty. So we do and construct every asset of ours on our own. So we have a complete EPC division. And why so? Because we have to live with the asset for 20 years to run it, to deliver the steam 365 days, 24/7. And all our boiler assets, we operate above 98% capacity utilization and plant load factor on 100% biomass. So the myth of biomass not being available, biomass supply chain management not being available is busted. So we go to the fields, we set up intermediary briquetting assets, we set up boilers in our books, and we get paid after we have delivered energy to the client. And many more companies do that today. So the answer is, we do the entire value chain, but if a client chooses for the asset to be in their books for business reasons, for the depreciation reasons, then we only take it on operation and maintenance contracts. So they hold the assets, but we operate it for 5 years, 10 years, and give them energy pricing.
Can I ask one last question?
Yes, yes.
It's fascinating to hear the discussion that's going on. And I'm, well, personally very impressed with the amount of biomass that is being generated the amount of biomass that is being generated and is being consumed. My only thing is that can we find and to grow the business the way you are talking about, whether it's generating steam or things like that, and leave out automobile industry from that. And the reason why I'm saying is that if you have many kinds of fuels in automobile industry, you are making life very complicated. You're making life very complicated for manufacturers, you're making life complicated for suppliers, you're making life for the consumers. Because same model needs to be produced in this. Hundreds of spare parts have to be kept. I mean, the whole thing becomes very complex. So my advice would be that rather than push it into automobile industry, can you push it into the industrial thing where there's a huge scope? I can see that. Huge scope. And you're converting it to billets and things like that and putting it there. Or for stationary uses, wherever it is. And so leave out this because the government is suddenly gone a little haywire on that kind of thing, enforcing this. And I believe that it will be detrimental to the economy, it will be detrimental to the industry itself.
Ravi, just if I may, there's this e-fuel concept, and we heard, the Porsche director talking to us about it in Brazil. They've set up. There are many plans for e-fuel.
Brazil per se is different.
Yeah.
I mean, we should not become Brazil and China and Japan and Europe, everything combined. The country must decide on its own which way it wants to go. With limited resources, you need to have limited options and not have 15 options to choose from. That's a limited point.
Yeah.
May I, sir? And the project 42, which I refer to, talks about 11 sub-projects. One of them is, the biofuel side for transportation, but it's the government's choice to choose which of the 11 they want to do, all of it or not, or only a part of it, because the government also has to ensure the demand side management of it. If we don't want to push the automotive industry, why are we saying to push the aviation industry? Why are we saying to push the shipping industry? Everybody has their own ways of business. So what I think the government is pushing, and at least I beg to differ here positively, is sustainability across industries. And we need to push for that. And in this space, the change management must have reasonable time to be given. It can't be thrust upon a consumer. Today I have a car, and though the car life might be 20 years, but I'm being pushed today for a 10-year discard of that car. Why? Because at the point of time of acquisition, it was a fuel which was fossil. So, that change management towards sustainability, meeting the targets, government has to decide for people, for the citizens. And particularly, what I think India is pushing is a 20% of the fuel mix where the ARAIs have kind of said that you don't need the engines to be changed. So I'm not technically conversant there to comment on that, but since that's the number given, at least the Indian government is pushing for that 20% target to be met.
Unfortunately, we are almost at the end of the session, so I'd like to thank Dr. Arabinda Padhee, Mr. Bilimoria, and Col Ahuja for joining this session and making this discussion very engaging. Can we have a big round of applause for that?